Yeah. So typically. That's it. Yeah, but it's just. Oh, basic. There's no, it's like.
Hey Fred, I think we could get started if you'd like.
So. And Willow, so my thought was, assuming we have a decent number of folks that want to speak,
Yes. I would think so too.
right? So the thought was that we would do, if they were gonna give us an overview of the decision document. That there's September.
What you could do is you could ask someone to make that modification agenda. Sue's the one, and then do that and say, well, just some comments up under.
It's just gonna be that piece.
And then, choose one piece before we get started. Ask the thing, see the thing.
Right, because they should have received.
Receive it, do they have any questions, and if they don't, questions with staff. Questions for someone specifically.
Do you want to do that at the beginning? Or could we do it I think we could do that. Usually, Laura just always did it at the end.
But in case there's anything that.
And do you guys have a list? She's got it, ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, he could send it to me.
And we need to be as Tom, right? Because Tom's going to be our vice chair.
Also our commissioner.
Just Sammy, is he the only one here? Mr. Poland is here.
Mr. Corbett, yeah.
Hey, Steve, how are you? Good to see you. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so we can get started. The folks in the back are able to hear us okay. So this is the January 2024 meeting of the Southern Regional Advisory Committee. Usually at the start, we have all the members of the advisory committee give a quick introduction. So I'm Fred Scharf. I'm a professor of fisheries biology at UNCW. I've been a member of this committee probably since 2006 or 7, and currently serve as.
I'm Sam Boyce. I'm a recreational fisherman. I've been on this committee for 3 years now, since it started.
Ken Ziegler, Hubert, North Carolina. I've been on finfish for a right good while, 3 terms on finfish, a term on blue crab. I've been on FMP for blue crab. I've been on FMP for red drum. Yes, I'm your Southern Committee now.
My name is Tina Moore. I'm the staff co-lead along with Chris Stewart. So if you do have any questions outside of the meetings and so on, please call us. We can direct you to web pages or who in our staff or leads for different topics. More than welcome to open up any conversations that you have or questions to help with the meeting businesses that go on throughout the year. So I'm glad to be here, and also I'm really glad, Jeremy, that you accepted the role.
Thank you.
I'm Willow Patton. I'm one of the strike bullet files of South Washington region.
I'm Jeff Dobbs. I'm a co-lead for Strike Bullet in the Central District Office in Morehead City, and I'm here to answer questions.
I'm Tom Smith. I live in Weddington. I am, technically a recreational fisherman. When I first came on the inland board that I was on, it was kind of a mixed use because in my banking career, I financed a great deal of fish processors and fish houses in the southeastern U.S. So different than most people from that point of view. I was on the inland committee when it was still there, and moved to the southern when it started. When I was on the inland, I was the Sea Grant representative for the Sea Grant research grants that we did over the years. I've been on 2 different striped bass FMPs, and so I've been doing this a long time. I think this will be the 3rd fisheries management plan for striped mullet that I have seen, and besides that, I'm also the mayor pro tem of Weddington, so I'm an elected political hack.
And now, Tom, just to recognize that he's agreed to serve as the vice chair of this advisory committee. Jerry James had stepped off the committee to serve.
Okay. I'm Jeremy Skinner, Newport, North Carolina, and I'm first year on the Southern Advisory Committee in the commercial seat.
I'm Hope Wade. I'm in the director's office, and I'm just here to provide admin support.
I'm Corinne Flora. I'm the Fisheries Management Plan Coordinator. Today I will be helping with motions, things like that, and providing you with a view of things.
Do we have folks online, Hope, that want to introduce themselves? I know Jason's online.
Yep, Jason's online, Jeff, Truby Proctor, and I think that's Pam Morris on there.
Jason, are you able to hear us and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I can hear you, Fred. My name is Jason Fowler. I've been a member of the Southern Regional Advisory Committee since 2019.
Truby?
Yeah, Truby Proctor. I live down east in Marshallburg, recreational seat on the advisory.
And Jeff?
I'm Jeff Harrell. I'm a recreational fisherman in Swansboro, North Carolina, and this will be the start of my 3rd year on the committee.
And Pam, is that you that's on?
She's unmuted.
Okay, we'll circle back to Pam. If Pam's here, we'll hear from Pam, I'm sure. So, thank you everyone for being here. First order of business is.
Hey, Pam.
Am I muted? Am I muted?
Nope. No, ma'am.
We can hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, Pam Morris was on the Central Committee, appointed in 1998, and when that dissolved, I moved to the Southern Committee, and I've been serving on the Southern Committee since then. That's it.
Great, thanks, Pam. So we have to vote on the approval of the agenda. What I had planned to do was make a slight modification and allow for public comment after the presentation of the decision document. Had asked Tina if Jeff or Willow could walk through the decision document And after that, we can have public comment, and then the committee can begin our discussions to vote on recommended management options for the commission to consider at their February meeting.
So you're saying move the vote to recommended management options for FMC to be after the public comment.
Correct. Is everyone okay with that change?
That's the way it should be.
So that's how we'll be thinking. I don't know, do we need to vote on that change?
Yes, please.
I make a motion, we do the amended, move the vote to after the public comment.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Tom, seconded by Sam. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed to that change in the agenda? Okay, should be good. We also have to approve the minutes from the April meeting. So the last time that we met as a committee was April 2020 or 2023. And you also should have received the meeting minutes from that meeting in your package. I printed mine. That wasn't a meeting that we made any recommendations. So it was more of an informational meeting where we received updates from the commission. We received some updates on spotted sea trout scoping. I had provided some updates on some of the Cape Fear fish passage research that we were doing. So can someone make a motion to approve the minutes from the April meeting?
This is Jason. I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Thanks, Jason. Seconded by Sam. Sure. All in favor of approving the April minutes that you received?
Aye.
Yeah. All right, so we can move straight into our primary item of business tonight, which is the draft amendment for the Striped Mullet Fishery Management Plan. So the decision document was shared with everyone in their package. And that document includes some background information, a brief section on background, because we've been presented with some of this in the past.
Not everyone got a package.
What's that?
I said, not everyone got a package.
Oh, not everyone got a package?
Nope.
Okay.
I went home, downloaded it for myself and printed it out anyway.
Yes, and they brought copies here for folks to have, but given that whether people got packages or not, I wasn't sure how much time folks would have to digest everything that's in the document prior to tonight. And so I asked Tina if Jeff and Willow could be prepared to give us a brief overview of this document that would be on the basis of our discussion. So are you guys okay to do that?
Yeah, we can. We'll say we did record a listening session prior to this. If anyone wants more in-depth, there's about a 30-minute presentation that covers really even more in-depth than this document if you're looking for management options and how we got there. Basically, today we're looking for a motion. Your action item is to approve this document or provide some suggestions for recommended management options. In order to rebuild the stock, which is overfished and overfishing is occurring, and so the 2019 stock assessment, we need a 21.3 to 35.4% reduction to rebuild the stock and end overfishing. So we have several suites of options, including size limit options, which you'll see on page 4. Part of page 5, we have season closure options that are standalone. On page 5, we have standalone trip limit options on page 6, along with day of week closure options. Going on to page 7. And then we have the combination of measures, which would be page 8, and that's where the division's recommendation lies. That would be option 5.N, which would be a January 1st to 31st and November 16th to December 31st, 50-pound trip limit. Saturday and Sunday all year, 50-pound trip limit. February 1st to October 15th, 500-pound trip limit. I'm happy to go into how we came up with these, or we can discuss other options as well. But that's,
Can you guys just remind us what was just the most recent efforts as part of the supplement, that were put in place in 2023? The 2023 season closure?
Yes. So after the stock assessment, we had to start the FMP process, which was going to take longer than we were willing to wait to get some management in place. We needed something, one instrument to get some reductions to jumpstart our rebuilding of the stock. So we decided on a season closure would be the simplest, bluntest way to do that. Originally, we had a single season closure across the state. After talking to stakeholders during our scoping meetings, we found that the southern region, their roe fishery occurs later in the year. So to make it a little bit more equitable, we had 2 season closure dates, one for north of the 58 Bridge and one for south of the 58 Bridge. It was a November 7th through the end of the year closure in the north and a November 10th through the end of the year in the south. We have heard feedback that was tough for folks, and we heard that a complete season closure was something that they wanted to avoid. So based on that, if you look at our preferred management options, we're at least allowing a lower trip limit during those periods, and that's basically to reduce discards in the fishery and to allow folks to have at least some amount of harvest.
How do you see, I'm looking at, you're talking on page 8, your 500-pound limit. Is that what?
Well, there's a multitude of options on here. Just if you're talking about the DMF recommendation,
Right.
that 500-pound limit would be from February 1st through October 15th. And within that same period, you would still have a Saturday and Sunday 50-pound trip.
I think
Which would be instead of a complete weekend closure, and that would allow for there to, basically in other fisheries that catch striped mullet incidentally, it would reduce discard.
I think, no, I believe that is going to be your problem, is an overabundance of discards. If you put a 500-pound limit and somebody takes in 2,000 pounds of fish, then what are we to do? That's a major issue there. Your discard rate there is going to be
And that
potentially massive.
Yeah, that 500-pound limit is purposely not during the roe season. So that's when other components of the fishery are occurring, like your bait fishery, that's mainly up in the Dare County area. And then you also have the meat fishery, which is throughout the year. And typically the fish houses aren't looking for super high volumes for that. The tackle shops are asking for small amounts at a time, and then the personal consumption or the meat market significantly less, much lower volume than the roe fishery. So we felt that 500 pounds a day would be adequate to fulfill those.
So basically I'm gonna have to throw over 500 pounds of fish if I catch 1,000 pounds.
The hope would be that there would be some change in fishing behavior to not set on such large schools or fish less.
How are you going to do that and measure that? It's a change in the behavior. I see fish, I run a net around and take fish. That's my objective. Now, as far as weighing them in the water, anybody can do that, but they're very seldom right. So you can look at what you think, well, it's 500 pounds of fish, and turn out and there's 5,000 pounds. So what do you do?
So trip limits are a pretty well established management measure.
I understand that.
So we would hope that it would function the same as it does in other fisheries where folks would start to either change their gear configurations or the way that they're setting on these to reduce discards, because I know no one wants to have thousands of pounds of discards.
So that's what you're gonna end up with.
Is there, so just to make sure I understand, during October 16 to November 15, there's no trip limit except the weekend trip limit? During the row mullet season? So there's no daily trip limit in that month except for on Saturday, Sunday.
That's correct.
Other,
And
other
I have a
questions?
question. How much is this really gonna, this says it's gonna reduce. This will be the third FMP on striped mullet I've been on. And each time management decision came down to basically the last pound of fish that could be allowably caught and stay within the guideline. We failed each time, keep from being, have the stock keep reducing at very significant levels. It didn't just strike mullet. It's been a whole number, a host of things that we go to the last fish. I'll just say that to be caught. And I look at these things as that this needs to be as simple as possible. Doing these huge gyrations of this just seems like it's going to be very difficult for the fishermen and hard for enforcement. It just seems very difficult. You know,
It's gonna
I
be,
should say it's a blunt instrument, but just saying the season closes and people quit, you may not, you may have some other issues from it, but it's the easiest, simplest, and everybody knows what the rules are.
Don't think Marine Patrol would argue that it's simpler and that they,
Simpler is better.
and if that's something that you as a group agree with, we would take that as your recommendation.
It would seem like the short season closures are, like you just said, simpler, but more effective than counting on someone else's summation of what 2,000 pounds or 500 pounds of fish look like while they're in the water.
And I will say with the reason that we're not just doing a season closure at the end of the season is we had an advisory committee specifically for the mullet FMP where we had a 3-day workshop, discussed all this. And this really, most of these options and the portions of the combination management that came out of that workshop, they've been refined since. But we've heard numerous times that the industry wanted to avoid a complete season closure. That is just crippling. So we did everything in our power to get this reduction, but make it less of an impact on the roe fishery, which is the most valuable portion of this fish.
I'll say it's the most valuable, and I'll say this, back in past career, I financed God knows how much roe going to Asia. I was one of the guys who helped set up financing, millions of pounds of this stuff. But ultimately, that is the most vulnerable time for the mullet. You've got to have enough escapement to allow to keep the population up to a certain degree. You're going to catch them, not going to catch them. Some going to swim, and everybody says, "Well, we don't want anything extra to swim than what we need." But the way we've done it so far hadn't worked. I mean, what is the level from where we were 15 years ago? Biomass. It's very significantly lower, correct? By your studies?
Yes.
Yes.
I will say that this particular management option that we're recommending aims for the target, which would give us the highest probability of rebuilding the stock within. This is an extremely conservative.
I would much rather see a mesh size than I would a day off, 2 days off. If that's the day the fish show up. And, they hang around for a couple of days on Monday morning or Sunday at midnight, somebody's gonna put a net around them. And you're gonna you've done nothing. Everything's recouped right there, John.
Take a week to make any difference
No.
because all you're gonna do is shift to another day and catch it then. It doesn't do a thing.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So a Saturday, Sunday closure with 50 pounds makes no sense.
Yeah. It seems to me you have it open until you have the total catch caught and or the date hits it, make it simple. And when it's done, it's done.
I think you could go as far as for being a lot fairer to every fisherman, irregardless, as you go to a minimum mesh size and you allow selectivity to address the issue. Numerous ways to approach that. You could say a 2-inch mesh in row season, October 1st to December 31st, minimum mesh size. That way, everything that's coming through less than 2 inches, and a big majority of those fish are in part of the SSB. They're spawning fish from an inch and a half right on all the way up to 2 inches and beyond. That's more than what you say there, L50. It's a lot higher than that, I promise you. It may look like that on paper, but that is a huge portion of the population. When you start saying from an inch and a half fish up to a 2-inch fish, and they're going right straight through the net and not even being bothered, that's a huge escape, huge escape. And to say that wouldn't help the situation, I believe you're sadly mistaken. If you're looking in the winter fishery, you say, well, how does that affect the winter fishery? You put an 1 3/8 mesh on the winter fishery, and you got 2 mesh sizes below that, 1 1/4, 1 5/16. That's par, not stretch. Those 2 sizes, if you've got a minimum of 3/8, those 2 sizes are going right through that 3/8 net, unscathed. They're selected out and they're moving on. Those fish enter the spawning stock. If you put that in place this February, right now, next month, you said minimum size 1 3/8. Okay, those fish that escape and go through that 1 3/8 net are going to be a part of the spawning stock this fall. It's a 2-year-old. It's already 1-year-old at 1 1/4, 1 5/16. In the fall, it's going to be 2 years old, and it'll be in the 2-inch, 2-pound range. So the only way stopping people from fishing is not going to do it. You're just hurting fishermen.
Now, I do want to say we discussed gear restrictions within the FMP, and those are on the table, absolutely. I think the division would be happy with anything that could get us towards the target. This is just something that we developed through the AC workshop and through communication with the industry.
I think your problem is with your closures on the weekend, it's just gonna be Monday morning, whether it's whatever, it's gonna be recouped right there. If that man don't catch it up there, days later, I'm gonna catch it down here.
All those day closures do is work in species where you have interaction between recreational and commercial fishermen. I don't think they do a blame thing and basically a commercial fishery.
Right. It's not a recreational fish.
No.
So can you provide a little bit of input on and camp and just on the mesh size options that, you know, the working group discussed, right? When you guys had the advisory committee for striped mullet and had a working group about what their concerns were with feeling that mesh size restrictions.
Yeah, absolutely. So the main concern with mesh size restrictions is the effects that it's going to have on other fisheries, right? If we say that you can't fish less than a 2-inch mesh.
If I interrupt you, if you don't mind, this is specific to the mullet FMP. It has nothing to do with any other fisheries. And the rules that are made for the mullet FMP apply to the mullet FMP and nothing else.
I'm just simply justifying, giving you our reasoning for not including it within our recommended option was based on the feedback that we heard that it would have unintended consequences on other fisheries, such as in the Albemarle, you have the white perch fishery, or you have the sea mullet fishery throughout the state. There's other fisheries that would be impacted by gear restrictions. It's definitely a direction we can go, and it's discussed in the small mesh gillnet information paper. And it's also discussed within the sustainable harvest issue paper. It's just not in this specific recommendation. We're not saying we can't consider that. We're not saying the MFC can't consider that. Those are all of them.
That's what we're here to do, to discuss recommendations.
Yeah, and I'm not, I thought you were asking me why you weren't allowed to do that. You
No, I just wanted to know what the thoughts were from the working group. Other clarifying questions? Folks online that have clarifying questions for Jeff?
Question about the adaptive management options, and just, I guess, two questions in there. One talks about at least once between 4 reviews. Should there be some additional timing in there? I mean, is it 5 years between FM plans, and it gives y'all discretion to do that, but if you don't do it till year 4, like, would that even make any sense? So should that be within the first 3 years or something is my question.
So the reasoning, I'm sorry, go ahead. The reasoning behind having that adaptive management framework is so that we're not bound to reopen the plan if stock conditions change. And the way we would monitor that is through a stock assessment. Well, we're going to be ready to do another stock assessment, to update this stock assessment. I'm hoping well before this cycle opens again. And so this would just basically enable us to make changes within the framework of this amendment. We wouldn't have to reopen the plan, and it would hopefully shorten the time period between assessment and management, which is an issue we've heard time and again with this, because our terminal year is 2019. This plan is hopefully going into effect in 2024. We can shorten that window substantially by not having to reopen the plan.
Can I add to that 1 second?
Yeah.
To clarify, I think a little bit more of where you're getting at. This language is something we've been using in several of our adaptive managements when it comes to a stock assessment recently. Because one, the at least once means we could do it more than once. It's less prescriptive. So like Jeff said, we might do this one twice between the 5-year plan, based on when it was and what data is available. The other reasoning is that we have a limited amount of people to do stock assessments. And so we have, 12 FMPs. Forget how many of those have stock assessments. So the more prescriptive we get, it could run into a problem where either we see a problem with the fishery and we want to do a stock assessment sooner, but now it says we can't because it's prescriptive, or the other direction where we see that the indices are all doing really good, because we monitor that every single year in our FMP update. And then it's too prescriptive that says we have to do it at another time. So that's why the language is a little bit loose here of at least once, and it doesn't say it's just between those 5 years.
I guess the question I'm struggling with there is it sounds like y'all are saying we want discretion when we do this. This is saying you need to do at least one in there. So you're going to do one. The way that words to me is we're going to update the stock assessment at least once. So we're going to do it sometime between this 5 years.
Yes.
I guess my question was, if that's at year 4, does that make any sense? Like,
Depending on the species and depending on what we're seeing in those annual updates, there are certain species that might make sense. So that is why we use this slightly open language for this.
so this is going in there, so there's gonna be an updated stock assessment for twice for every FMP update, anytime this language is used.
No. There's at least one.
I'm saying you do one and then you do,
So we have our benchmark, and that's what we do for our stock for this. So our benchmark is that one. An update is taking that benchmark and putting more data into it.
so this isn't saying you're doing an extra one. This is saying you're going to do one at least before the next FMP is updated.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I misunderstood how that was worded there because it sounded like y'all were going to do another one before you did one for the
Yeah.
FMP. That's the way I read that.
So
language. So
typically when we start an FMP, we do a benchmark assessment. And a benchmark assessment is a more holistic, open view of stock assessment, whereas an update, you keep the nuts and bolts, how you did the nuts and bolts, you add more data. And so that's what it's saying is that at least once between those benchmarks, we'll do an update. And that's just to see if we're progressing in the way we need to with management. And that's where this rest of this adaptive management comes in.
You see a good stock assessment, which way it was.
But we'll take public comment in a little bit.
Yeah, you took his public comment.
I had one other question on this, which was this sentence, when management targets are met, strike management work group will be convened. Does that belong in that area? Shouldn't that be just a separate line? I don't know if that may be too much detail for that.
Sure you want?
Same page, page 9. It just seems like that should be a whole separate line. When management targets are met, then we would.
So it would be based, the management targets would be based on the stock assessment. So that's why it's a subheading. Is that your question? Why is it part B of number one?
Why is that not a whole separate thing? Because you've got part B. If the management targets are big, the new management measure would not be needed, and then you would go to the next FMP. But why wouldn't, like, shouldn't that whole thing, if we meet the target, that should be at the top of the thing? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like it's part of
Basically, it's
options.
to explicitly state that we could, that we are keeping loosening of management on the table within this. We're stating that we could loosen management in response to a recovered stock. Which is basically all we're trying to say.
Say you possibly could loosen it in a 5-year period with a 10-year target.
Well, the
So
target is,
what-
that's what we're statutorily bound to, but that doesn't mean we can't rebuild the stock in 2 years.
Have you seen that happen recently in any of our major species?
Prolific fish.
I know you can, if they have the right, everything happen right for them.
Right.
Now, yeah, I'm not saying that I think it's.
I just haven't seen the management change enough that would.
Just provides the ability to. So let me understand on the full reviews. So the full review schedule is a 5-year schedule, but it doesn't necessarily that you're going to do a benchmark assessment when you do the FMP.
Not always, but typically it does. And then the other thing that it could mean, and this goes to what Tom was just talking about here. If in 5 years, and this is like something that like, and this is maybe not for mullet, but this is just how it works. For red drum, for instance, we came to the 5-year benchmark and we saw that we didn't get the management done. And so we did we used the annual review as the stock assessment review. Therefore, no management was changed. And so in that case, if mullet didn't need management changes in 5 years, and we came to this and we just used that update, this then is still in there. So like 9 years down the line, if we saw that it could be loosened, that would still be there.
But you do one of these every 5 years.
Not necessarily, that's what I'm saying. So if we see that no management is necessary, we don't have to
You
do
don't
an
have,
amendment.
you don't have, only if there's overfishing.
Only if
Basic.
management needs to change.
Well, usually that's because of the source, the source is overfished and being it's over.
Go the other direction and we need to change management
Yeah, I know.
too. So anytime management.
That's what usually triggers it, is what we've always seen. The stock's been overfished and overfishing's continuing, therefore we do a FMP.
Red
That's
from we
what's-
went the
Well,
other.
could be any change in stock
I know,
size,
but
right?
that's
So
what we-
it could be in either direction. Right.
That's what we've been seeing. I'll just say that.
The other cases too, Tom, are when we have no stock assessment. So our shellfish and crustacean
Right.
species are good examples
Yep.
of that as well. So the 5 years are stopgap to check
Yep.
for pulse check.
And I think something to your point is, where's a scenario where nothing is needed? If we are rebuilding and we're on track and things are looking better, but we still haven't quite yet achieved the target SSB, target fishing level, then we would possibly just continue this amendment. Yeah, without change. So there are circumstances where we might not need to reopen the plan, but we would still want the ability to make changes within the site.
My only point is typically we see them get redone. And not for the right.
And I was just giving clarification on why it goes both directions.
Yeah.
Recreational, does that- So we got the 50 fish bag limit recreational. I don't necessarily have a comment about fish or not. I mean, it seems like people are gonna throw these back anyway, but most of that's for fishing, I'm assuming, like people are out there catching flounder or drum or whatever, and they're using bait. And if they run out of their 50 fish, they're just gonna go get 54. So I'm wondering, and nobody's ever going to catch them regardless of who checks on them if they've only got 50 fish on board. I'm wondering if we should add some additional messaging. Like, I don't know if y'all have budget for that, that talk about why that's in place and be much more clear about that in this FMP so that people are understand, why is this in place? I don't know.
Can you think of a way for us to?
I don't know. I mean, y'all have,
Does it 50,
that's one of the objectives of this plan. One of the objectives of the plan is to advance stewardship of North Carolina striped mullet practices to minimize bycatch and discard mortality. And so that is exactly something that fits into that objective. And that is something that we do through our social media, through Marine Patrol outreach, through the outreach that we do. And that is part of this plan, is to do things like that. So yes, there would be some best management practice.
Even for recreational
Recreational,
fishery.
it would be, yeah, we have, Jesse does some of our great, best management practice, infographics and stuff that we've been putting out and everything, and that is a objective of this plan.
So Marine Patrol is gonna go check somebody and check a live well to make sure they don't have more than 50 bait, mullet minnows in their live.
that's not what it says. This is fishes, 50 fish over 8 inches. It doesn't even address bait mullet at all.
Well, that's one of the options. That's not our recommendation.
Yeah, the recommendation is 50 in general, no size limit. Our options.
All of those fish are going to be thrown back overboard one way or the other, either on a line or.
Well, there are some that split them and salt them down and hold them over.
That's true.
People
People do eat them. I know.
catch them, and well, and you also have the roast in the fall, people catch them for their personal use. That it happens.
Smoke them up.
Smoke them up. Smoke mullet's good.
Do folks online or other folks here have any more clarifying questions for Deb? Well, you guys will be here throughout.
Well, how does that pertain to the finger mill? If you just say 50 fish, I'm asking, how many fish does it take one red drum one flounder and 4 speckled trout. How many mullet does it take to catch those fish?
Well, the MRF data we have suggests that 97% of anglers harvest 50 or fewer fish per trip. And most of them don't need more than 50.
Somebody throws on a nice little school of finger mullets, they catch them all, throw them all in the live well and go fishing and then see what's left alive and dump them.
Exactly what happened.
Or they take them and kill them and freeze them for bait.
I'd rather see it with a lower amount. And then if you have to go get back and get, say, 10, 15, and if you have to go back and get 10 or 15, go back and get them. You save 20.
Laundry in this, I guarantee you. This fish is used for a lot of different things. Not just roe.
Yeah.
Yeah, roe's the money in it, but there's a lot of other uses for these fish.
Live bait.
Live bait's a big part of it.
Yeah. Beef, mullet jerky,
Yep.
good stuff.
Are you guys okay to move to public comment?
If you give me a second to go to the restroom and back, I'll explain why later.
Well, we can take probably take a 5-minute biological break. We'll start with public comment at that point, because I have to get the list anyways. Talk about process. So just take 5-minute break. This is just feel that. Three is a.
It took a long time.
So you can do this 3 minutes. You said. Have 3 minutes each. We have 8 minutes. So. Taylor.
Tried this before.
Peppermint.
Yeah, I think that's pretty standard. So they behind it gets small. So she was pretty short. She was pretty short, because I've given him 2 before. You can't finish in 2 minutes.
2 what?
2 minutes when you sign up for public.
Oh.
Too short.
5 is better.
Yeah.
5's a whole lot better.
Yes. Yeah, we'll just make sure our meetings can be in person.
So it's a side of things.
Source of that process.
I'm trying to improve it.
I could, just a.
Since we're probably around. Like that. And, yeah, most springs out, she gets tired. She like, I don't know.
Just to make sure I'm understanding right. January, September. So January, September, and then in December. That would reduce the total loss catch. It's not. I just. That's, this is the expected percent reduction over the catch. Implement that.
And you'll notice that some, like, that's really the only area where there's asking the reductions within the combination.
Yeah.
Yeah, Because those are separated temporarily, that's why you can have it be added. These combination managements. You can't just say like Saturday, Sunday plus a. Yeah. That's what I was, I was just making sure I was. Yep, you're absolutely correct.
Outside. Figure out, well, how do you know that? My lights. So I said, yeah, probably. Not fine.
Yes. So we can get started.
Well,
Get down.
quiet stalls, don't open in the door. Now,
Be a good.
No, that's not fine.
now,
I don't.
Probably good to me.
Okay, folks, so we'll go ahead and get started. You guys you can tell, heck, keep it to- Okay. Timers, we'll try to- we'll have 8 people that want to speak early next week, so, and so we're gonna try to keep this.
3-second warning.
Yeah. That'd be fine. So we're gonna, move forward with public comment. We have 8 people that had requested to speak. And following the standard practices during the Marine Fisheries Commission meetings, we're gonna limit folks to 3 minutes. And Hope is gonna keep a 3-minute timer and give you a 30-second warning. So just try to be focused with your comments on what we're talking about here tonight. And so first person that signed up is Glenn Skinner.
Glenn Skinner, commercial fish, and also executive director of Carolina Fisheries. 30 years. Want to start off by telling y'all something that I haven't heard mentioned tonight. In the years since the stock assessment has been concluded, commercial landings have been increasing dramatically. We're seeing a lot more fish on water. 2022 was the 5th highest commercial landing for striped mullet on record. Not only are sampling, the independent gillnet survey is seeing dramatic increases, as well as the electrofishing survey, which was not used in the stock assessment, but is seeing huge numbers of fish in the thousands at the stations they sampled. All that said, I don't believe we have failed. Now, there's ups and downs in any stock, but this stock is rapidly expanding, and every piece of data that I've seen that's been collected since that stock assessment shows it. That said, we're seeing larger fish. I can't verify older fish. Division staff take them at age. We got some from the age, and I believe the ages were around 3 years. They said that could be the result of a strong class of fish coming through. Well, if that's the case, we saw those same fish again this year, much larger. That means the fishing pressure is not at a level to stop those fish from that were spawned in 2020 from surviving for 3 to 4 years. We are not fishing at a very high rate on this stock when environmental conditions are right and they successfully spawn. We have never in my 30 years seen massive catches of striped mullet like we're seeing, and we saw last year. 1,000-pound sets, and the only reason it's only 10,000, that's all our net will hold, it sinks. We are seeing massive catches, as is the division in their data. Now, that said, I agree, we need to keep this simple, and it needs to be equitable for every area, every fishery, every fisherman. Weekend closure, 2 days closed each week achieves a 25.7% reduction. It treats Ken the same way as it does me, Jeremy the same way as it does Ken. It doesn't matter if you're in the roe mullet fishery, the bait fishery, or the food fishery, you're affected equally throughout the year. southern area, northern area, central area, it doesn't matter. It's equitable. It'll give us time to see what this stock is doing because all anecdotal data and everything I've seen and heard shows that this stock is rapidly expanding. Again, that's something you all need to realize and consider when you're talking about this. This is not an overfished fishery. When you talk about the spawning stock biomass, even division staff don't have faith in the estimates of spawning stock biomass and the stock assessment. They've told me so themselves. Matter of fact, the estimates of spawning stock biomass, we caught more than we're supposed to exist. That's not possible and still have a growing stock and increasing catch every year. So I want y'all to consider all that and realize that, you know, we need better data in all of these fisheries, and striped mullet is one that is seriously lacking in data. And that should be our focus.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Skinner. Next person that signed up. Let's see if I can, Taylor Barefoot.
And if they can come up here, just so the speaker can
Yeah.
pick them up.
All right. Taylor Barefoot, fisherman from Wilmington, North Carolina. And, I think what Mr. Skinner said hit it right on point. And what he said, it's got to be cut and dry. It can't be no 500 pound here one day, then the next day you can have this and that. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work with the 500 pound law of Spanish mackerel neither, because like Ken said, you can't control what hits that net. Sometimes you see a lot of fish and you'll run the net around them. You might get 10 fish or you might get 1,000 pound. You can't control what hits them, you know, and needs to go to the weekend closure. It works. He said the numbers work, and that's what we need to do, and we need to try as a fishery. And the state can't be divided into two different sections because it's not fair for the southern district. Because like this year, it's hard to go buy fish when you can't even fish one, be at the northern side got the fish and we didn't, you know? I mean, how would you like to just go, like if you're a deer hunter, if you see a 10-point deer, if you go across the line, you can hunt one, but you can't, you know? That's not fair for us. But, and I think it's really a bad thing too, and I see a lot of it too, is how the marine fisheries tries to make the commercial and the recreational side fight each other. Need to try to work together instead of work against each other, and need to come up with a reasonable solution that works for everybody, not one that just benefits one side or the other. But at the same time, you need to consider too, the fishermen do have to make their living from this. You know, it's not just a playground like some people think it is. You know, this is how we feed and provide for our families. Appreciate it.
So the next person on the list, I'm not sure that I can read this. Is with an L?
Lynn?
Lynn?
Limona?
No.
No,
Is it
Joe Slater.
Parsons?
Carson.
Yes. So is it Lee Parsons?
Lee.
Okay.
Name's Lee Parsons, and for what it's worth, I am a charter for hire and I am a recreational fisherman. I also have a major in marine technology and a minor in marine biology. I look at things a little different, being on the water as much as I am. And I've been a commercial fisherman. I participated in the striped mullet fishery commercially for the road. Back in the heyday of Sammy Corbett and Richard and Bubba Cox and all those, I was right in the middle of all that and enjoyed every minute of it. But, you know, as a biologist, I got to tell you, if there's a problem, quit taking the babies. You know, that's it right there. Quit taking the babies, at least for a while until you can build the stock back up, if that's the problem, because you can't make more fish if there's no babies. And that's the problem with the road fishery. I don't say it's a problem. That's just how life works. You know, as far as the commercial or the for hire section, I could live with 50 per trip if that's what y'all want to do. I don't like it, but I can live with it because I can get other things if I need to make it up. I've been counting bait now for 3 years, and it takes me 100 baits to run a trip on a really good day. Problem is, here lately, the good days are going away. The drum fishery is really going down in the southern end of here. And that's what I'm talking about, is this end of it. We're a long skinny strip from Bogue Sound to here, all the way to the South Carolina line. The other thing y'all need to do is learn how to work with other states. Is it fair for us with the flounder fishery to keep a 14-day open commercially where you can go to South Carolina and catch them, bring them back across the state line? Is that fair to us? Is that fair to the commercial guys back here to have that same kind of thing? No, learn to work with the other states. Because if we're constricting ourselves, but the other state has an open season on them, what good are we doing for the fishery? It doesn't work. That's the biology part of me talking to you guys right now. I'm going to give you another one. When it comes to red drum, y'all need to do a research on the effects of caged oysters and the red drum and the finfish and the speckled trout. Because until you do, you can't keep bringing more of these caged oyster leases in to here. Bottom leases work great. The fish love it. They don't like a caged oyster. They're in there rolling them around, making noise, the whole thing. And it's just the wrong way to approach things. And until they do a study on it, you need to put a moratorium on more caged oysters. I just want to get it on your record because it's the only way I know to do it anymore.
Okay, next on the list is Jack Spruill.
Thank you. My comments about general fish habitat matters. I think it would be better at the general comments at time.
Okay, at the end.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah. Andy Wood, same. Sheil Patel. Same. And then Joe Romano.
How you doing? My name is Joe Romano. I'm a commercial fisherman, owner of Seaview Crab Company here in Wilmington. And I want to start by saying I 100% back Glenn's recommendation. I think it's a great solution. We're kind of right now on the heels of a flounder fiasco with two state agencies debating each other. We're in an ugly spot, I believe, in the state and how management takes place. And if we put another perfect fishery in place, not only does it screw up the fishermen, it screws up the price, it screws up mullet buyers that come down here to buy this roe, it stresses the seafood infrastructure, ice house, and it floods the market all at once, which it does with flounder, and it's screwing up a lot of things. So closing on Saturday and Sunday, good solution. Everybody can live by it, affects everybody equally. And we've been making these points, multiple meetings, and it falls on deaf ears. I don't feel like the division is hearing what commercial fishermen, and for that matter, recreational fishermen are saying, because now finally, I think we're starting to understand. We just pit recreational and commercial fishermen against each other. We don't get good solutions. We get winners and losers. And finally, I'm starting to think people are waking up to say, hey, collaborative undertaking to figure this kind of stuff out. But most importantly, and I hesitate to start saying who can get cast net and roe mullet and this and that, who gets to have them, and that draws us into the fight. Although I do believe that if we do have a true problem with mullet, which I don't believe we do, then why in the world would we allow them to catch unspawned mullet in a cast net? That's crazy. I mean, just for equitable, that seems nuts. But there again, I don't think there's a problem with the mullet. And that brings me to my final point here, is that something is wrong with the data collection. I think we know that. I think the state knows that. I think when you show up to these meetings and listen to commercial mullet fishermen up and down the state, they're telling you they're catching just like Glenn was saying, and yet the data is not measuring up. So we're doing something wrong. So I'd like to see a little bit more humility in stock assessment and data collection so we can work together to get good solutions for the state. Because I want to make this clear, as a fish house owner, as a fisherman, this is not just fun. This is for food, this is for sustenance, and this is an important cultural heritage thing that's been going on for over 100 years in the state. So appreciate y'all representing the Southern District, Southern fishermen. When you shut this fisheries down, whenever it is, November 16th, you're cutting out a month and a half, and we're already on the heels of losing spot, croaker, all these things that pile up down here. And mullet don't operate in a pond. They don't operate in a pond, and they don't operate on a calendar, and they don't understand algorithmic projections. All right, this is a separate thing. So please listen to us and support us with the Saturday, Sunday closure. Appreciate it.
Last on the list to speak was Bonnie Monteleone.
Not gonna speak now.
Okay, defer till the end. So we can revisit some public comment at the end of the meeting for general topics. Okay, so we don't have anyone else that's trying to speak on the strike mullet FFP Amendment 2. For discussion within committee on the recommended management options. Have the document in front of us in terms of the division's recommendations, but there are lots of alternative options in here. For the discussion, we can also ask some additional questions of definitely if necessary. We'll open the floor up to questions, comments that folks want to make. Folks online, Jason, Truby, Pam, Jeff. You guys have comments. Feel free to, we don't need to raise our hands. Usually it works pretty well if people just speak unless there's multiple that want to speak at the same time. Do you have any comments, questions that they want to bring to the table?
There's a huge amount of options and ways to do this. Philosophically, there's pretty diverse opinions on what's the best way to do this. As I said earlier, I believe it's simple, but I'll say to our friends who just spoke about Saturday and Sunday gets us to the number. I think all that does is take what is currently happening with no restriction and just remove those 2 days and think that that pressure won't change to another day. I think there's fallacy in that calculation. You look at it from that point of view. If I can do something 7 days a week, I will scatter my time over the best days to go out and go fish. And if it just happens to be that it is Saturday and Sunday, well, and this is when all this stuff gets reported back to the fish house. They say, here's what we got. Here's the days of, on fish tickets or the fish house. Or this is the days people are fishing and whatever, and what they got. Well, if you take 2 days out, all that, in my mind, fisherman's gonna go work to catch the same thing he's been catching. I believe you will.
If I could speak, I would tell you that I work 7 days a week during row mullet season, been 40, 50 mile an hour winds. I've worked through hurricane. You would, because it's a short window. So when I lose 2 days, I lose 2 days. I can't make them up. It's only a short window during the.
I know it's a short window.
But not being adamant, but when you kind of address that to me, I just want to make sure you know.
I know, but that number may not be truly mathematical.
Well, not only that, but I believe that in the road fishery, we're not in a pond. They're not staying in the same location. These fish are on their way to the ocean. So 2 days is a long time in respect to location of these fish. They can go a long distance in 2 days. So I think that's where the escapement is occurring on the weekends, is by not being able to catch them. They can be in the ocean, be in areas that you can't catch them. And they, once they get through there, nobody may ever catch them again until they come back in. I mean, that's what the point is we're trying to put across.
So you're not catching them here, but the boys fishing the beach with the runarounds or the stop nets ain't catching them.
They're going to have a lot better chance if they get out there to survive.
70,000 pounds.
They come in big bunches right down the beach.
They come in big bunches inland also. And,
They do.
Used to. They don't down here no more, buddy.
They do.
Management option was the one y'all recommended, had the 30,000 pound stop net limit anyway.
Correct.
Yeah. But that's a separate one of several options that need to be put together to make the whole thing correct.
Just to note, there is a column for the reduction, the combination reductions by themselves, and then there's another column where if you were to put in 30,000 pound stop net cap, that would.
That's on the right.
Yeah, so the straight reduction is if that,
Wasn't
that,
there.
those restrictions are across the entire fishery, including the stop net catch.
Okay.
And the second column is if we had separate management of a 3,000 pound catch cap for the stop net fishery only.
And it goes exactly what I said. This year you had a 70,000 pound strike. How are you gonna say, well, I'm gonna cut them here and I'm only gonna take 30,000 pounds? There's no physical way to do it and guarantee that you're gonna have a huge amount of discharge. I mean, and when you start throwing 5,000 pounds of mullets back on the beach and tourists coming through and looking at them, well, who's killing all the fish?
I thought
You're creating a problem that doesn't need to be.
I thought the option was once they hit that, whether they catch 70 pounds or 60,000 pounds or 30,000 pounds, when they go over 30,000 pounds, you close the fishery. So there shouldn't be any discards from that fishery.
There's no trip limit there, right? It's just a
It's
30,000.
the 30,000 pound season.
It's a gear.
Depending on how we approached it, you know, see where there's multiple ways that you can approach it.
But it's not a daily cap. It's just a fishery cap for the stop net.
I do have one question. We do have, I assume we have some Marine Patrol out behind me or outside, and ask their input on enforceability. Because we don't want something they can't enforce or catching these guys unintended. If you know what I'm saying, we are not here in the business to write tickets.
They have questions for me.
We were just asking some questions about.
His underwear is thicker than mine. You've heard what we've been discussing on that when it comes to what y'all have the ability to do, not do, or unintentionally have issues.
Flat closures are easier to enforce. Flat closures. That's just, I mean, that's mechanics. If you possess the fish and there's a closure, you're in the wrong.
Yeah.
We enforce trip limits, we enforce gear limits, we enforce, I mean, all gambits, we enforce it. But if you're asking what the easiest way to enforce something is a possession and a closure. You close it, then you can't possess it.
It's Friday night, 11 o'clock. I just struck and took in 5,000.
Depends on how the proclamation's written. If it says you can't possess them after that day, you better make sure you're to the dock before then.
If I get them to the dock and I get them in the truck,
If you land them before that time,
they're not landed until I get to the fish house.
if you read the definition of landed, it's at the dock. Depends on how the proclamation's written.
Well, I wouldn't put a whole lot of faith in that right now anyway.
You're charged to do what they're charged to do, not the way that the rules are written.
You know, the challenge is the 500-pound trip limit between February 1 and October 15. Not the challenges in trying to force that 500-pound trip.
Yep, you get 500 pounds. You come to the dock more than 500 pounds, you're in violation.
Well, how are you gonna know?
Because I can stop you and take you to the dock right there and weigh you.
Okay.
I can end your trip now.
And then force you to go and land and wait.
That's right. And weigh your catch that you're possession of that minute. Do we do that all the time? No,
No.
we let you fish, but if you put me in that situation, I can end your trip and take you to the dock and
That's if you use good judgment and reason and look and see what they got. And say,
I mean, if it sits there and it looks like,
beside the boat, you say, boy, we're going in.
that's right.
It's up to the seat. I know it's pretty close to 600 pounds.
Fishermen know what they have.
Pretty close.
That man right there can tell me what a basket of fish weighs all day long.
Probably tell you how many's in it too.
Probably can. They know if they have a good idea if they're over their poundage.
So can I ask you guys if, if you have,
But you still
you
have,
have option 7, which was just a seasonal catch, right?
Thank you.
It's just essentially a quota. It says seasonal, I'm assuming probably meaning just an annual catch limit, right? Whether that's at the statewide or regional level, that could be another discussion, but what was the conversation surrounding the seasonal catch limit? I'm just asking because, now that there's an annual catch limit for flounder, it's a seasonal limit, but it's an annual that season. And so the seafood dealers have to report, same day, and that those landings get tracked as close to in real time as possible. So there's infrastructure that's been established. And, historically, many state fisheries, North Carolina is not an exception, other states the same, typically have not managed a lot of their inshore fisheries using annual catch quota. Whereas at the federal level, most of what we do is managed with annual catch quotas, right? And so given that in North Carolina, that we've started there with flounder, and assuming that infrastructure would be applicable to other fisheries, what was the conversation about? And the reason I ask is because of the concerns that Tom brought up. They've been, there are always concerns when you have temporal closure, whether it's a day-night closure, a weekend closure, a Tuesday closure, an October closure, is that the fleet, whether it's a commercial or recreational fleet, will change behavior, and that effort will get reallocated to the open period of time. So there'll be more effort Monday to Friday, if possible, weather permitting, than because the weekends are closed. It's hard to know how that will play out until you do it. But we've seen it in other fisheries, both sectors, recreational, commercial, over many, many years when you have these temporal closures. And I know that the division, when they do that, they try to anticipate what those behavioral changes are going to be, and they built those in. But it's always hard to know exactly what they're going to be until you do it, right? And so whereas if you have just an annual catch limit, right, those go away because you fish until you hit your quota, and that's you have a certain amount of removals, and then the rest is allowed to escape. And so what were the discussions during the working group about the possibility of that?
Right, so you hit it right on the head. You're gonna have recoupment in anything other than a hard end date.
Right.
Whether it's a cap or a date.
Or a combination of whichever one comes first.
Correct, and that's part of the reason why the division is aiming towards the target, a more conservative approach.
Right.
So to account for some recoupment, but with a hard catch cap, it's been said a couple times here, this is an extremely diverse fishery. This is not just a roe fishery. This is not just bait fishery. There's people that depend on this throughout the year who sell the bait shops. There's people that do it sporadically to make some money. There's several markets that need to be filled. You have your bait, you have your meat, you have your roe. And by putting a catch cap on there without any other measures, you're going to end up taking that out of the roe fishery. So you're going to disproportionately affect that most valuable portion of the fishery. And what our goal here was to sort of spread that reduction across all the components of the fishery. So without having a hard end date and without, while still incorporating some reductions throughout the year, you're saving some more of that towards the roe season, and you're sort of sharing that reduction among all the segments of the fishery. Also with the catch cap, you're limited to the 2019 landings. Here, we're looking to get a reduction, maybe a reduction off of what we would have caught that year for these management measures, as opposed to strictly sticking to 2019. We probably would have had a closure in July of last year, as an example.
And, so, and I know this throws a whole monkey wrench in, but you could technically start the fishing year earlier, right? In terms of when your quota starts, right? You could start with the row season, right? And allow the fishery to start there in terms of when you're counting, whatever your quota is, right? However many 100,000 pounds or whatever it would be, you start there. But in that case, just as a hypothetical, would it still, in your view, disproportionately impact one segment of the fishery? So you start the fishery October 1, have your row fishery, have your winter fishery. It's probably going to close in the spring sometime, and you're not going to really have a warm weather fishery for mullet.
And we did have discussions about, possibly having two contingents of the season. You would have your row season and another part. So you would hit your row season quota, even if you could start it with the row, or you could start with the other part of the year and hit your catch cap for, say, the non-row season. We just had it separated like that. You would still probably end up with a period of time when you could have no harvest. What that would do is leave the fishermen who are providing lower volumes, but still a significant source of income throughout the year. You would say, all right, from now on, you can't provide the bait shops bait. And then the bait shops would say, we have no access to North Carolina caught fish from whenever you hit that cap, July 1st, all the way until the row season opened. So this is really this is the first FMP where we're going to have management on mullet. To me, the quote of the catch cap is sort of when you've exhausted all other possibilities. Right now, I think we can get there through some sort of combination management or weekend closure, something like that, that is more agreeable to the fishermen, and I think we can rebuild the stock. But when you get into catch cap, that is such a hard end, and we would be bound to manage to the 2019 stock assessment, which would be a pretty low catch.
But ultimately, isn't our charge to manage the species? And then after you figure out what you can afford to take out, then you look at how to get there. Not just say, let's figure out what we can do to nibble on the edges that helps them and see where that gets us. Because unfortunately, I think you have to look at the species first of what it takes to have a robust, biomass and fishery there. And then what actions by allowing or closing or whatever, various seasons or gear restrictions or whatever, what does that do to make sure we don't exceed what we take out?
So I would say our reduction level was set. We needed, it's I believe on page 121 to
21 to 35%.
So by us aiming for 35%, I would say the division is striving to achieve just what you're talking about, a sustainable fishery first and foremost. And beyond that, we said, okay, we need to get to this level. Then we said, how can we get there through maybe some creative means and working with the fishermen to try to find something that has maybe a less draconian impact on their income.
I would say that going to the high end is good because I believe at the last FMP, we looked to the bare minimum. If I remember correctly, there was a lot of discussion around that. We went to the number that it took, not to the full, where we'd like to be. We ended up slicing the baby so many ways that we ended up at the low end of the number, and we are where we are.
There hasn't been any on mullet. There hasn't been one.
Yeah, there's been one amendment to this, I know, because I've been here for 20 odd years, and I remember debating all that a number of times.
Debating it, but there's never been any regulation on it.
You had an original FMP.
Yeah.
That FMP had stock status, and then you've had one amendment since then. This is amendment 2. So what was the stock status for the FMP and the amendment? Have those? terms of whether it was overfished and overfishing was occurring.
Well, I know we didn't limit harvest in any of the last seven. And the 200 fish recreational limit was more of an enforcement thing, not for stock sustainability.
Okay.
So we haven't limited harvest in a way.
They said we can do it without having to do it. That's what they said. So they meant that by moving the numbers around, they said this will work. And we are where we are.
But I don't know that the stock was in an overfished state during the last FMP. In other words, was the harvest rate too high?
If it went overfish, we're managing to a F, right? You're managing to a mortality rate.
I think the problem comes in is where they changed the model at. In other words, you went from a 30% target to a 35% target.
Yeah.
Right, and the model would change from the old model that was in the old system was at 25%, wasn't it? I'm asking these guys. In the old model, the previous model, your target was 25%. Is that correct?
So that's incorrect. In the previous model, the target or the threshold was set the same as it is now. The threshold is what we use to determine overfished and overfishing status. The threshold, since the very beginning of striped mullet, has always been at 25%. In Amendment 1, the target, which we don't use to determine overfished or overfishing status, it was originally set at 30%. Amendment 1 changed that to 35%. We've maintained that in this amendment as well. So the threshold, which we use to determine overfished and overfishing, has never changed.
That's what I'm saying.
So what you're saying?
Well, it has changed.
It hasn't changed.
Well,
It has changed.
I know when I sat on the Finfish committee and it came through and they raised it from 25% to 30, it was either 25 to 30 or 30 to 35, one or the other.
That was the target.
Yeah.
It's always the target, then different numbers mean different
The
things.
target is where we'd like to,
But,
but the threshold tells us that it initiates management.
Understand this, the target increased and changed, okay? But there was no condition that required it to be changed. In other words, there was no overfishing and was not overfished. But target was increased anyway. That's the problem right there, the whole ball of wax.
Well, the targets though, the targets often get changed. They're not, it's not necessary to have a change in stock status to change a target.
Well,
There can be changes in fleet behavior. There can be new knowledge about life history of the species. There can be a lot of things that prompts us to say we'd like that target to be higher.
I know it done the same thing with flounder.
That can happen for a lot of reasons. It's not driven by the status of the stock.
It is driven,
Structure, a lot of things go into it.
There's a lot of information that goes in.
it is driven by a request for rules is what it is. What other explanation is there? If you're not overfishing and you're not overfished, why would you want to increase the target? Fishery's been conducted the same for the last 150, 200 years. Nothing's changed. Why would you want to increase the target?
So are you asking the reason why the target was changed?
It was specific to mullet?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, it was done in flounder too.
Give them much more eloquent
Give eloquent answer, but so I'll just remind you again, the threshold is what we use to determine the overfished or overfishing status. We're only required to manage to the threshold. So the target was in Amendment 1 and in the previous FMPs, the stock assessment found that overfishing was not occurring, stock was overfished. It required no new management was put into place in either of those FMPs.
Exactly.
We weren't shooting or any target, weren't shooting to get to the threshold. There was no changes. because of the stock status didn't require any changes.
You were at the threshold or above.
We were where we needed to be. In Amendment 1, the target, which we don't use to determine overfished or overfishing, was raised from 30% to 35%. And that change was made because of the ecological role of striped mullet and it provided some additional buffer. So if that we needed to do management, which we didn't in that amendment, if we needed to do management, it's a more conservative reference point so that it would rebuild the stock to a more sustainable level.
What in ecology has changed, the ecological role of the mullet has changed between 100 years ago and tomorrow?
I don't think anything in the ecological role has changed.
That was just the reasoning you gave for increasing the target.
And I never said that anything changed. I said we changed that. Yeah,
Important role that they play
exactly.
for other species.
We're accounting for that before. We wanted to account for that by adjusting that target.
The goal being they're prey fish.
Right, it's the same
Everything
reason-
eats.
it's the same reason.
Everything eats everything.
It's the same reason that the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission increased the target. Atlantic Menhaden of their role as a forest species, a lot of other species that they. So usually it's just new knowledge, new information, new understanding about life history and their role in the ecosystem that can cause changes in the targets. They don't always go up. Sometimes they go down. Sometimes we view a species as less vulnerable and we can manage to a lower target. So those numbers move around, but as Dan said,
I think
the threshold is what we use to determine the status of the stock. And if we fall below the threshold for biomass or above the threshold for the harvest rate, then we have to do something, right? Which is what's happening now, right? That's what the FRA tells us we have to do. Is that if the stock status says that.
Because they're ecologically important.
No, we're below the 25% threshold now, according to the stock assessment. The target is if we rebuild, they try to rebuild to that target. But the threshold is what tells us that we have to do something.
Which is brought about a need for regulation.
Correct. I mean, there's a need because the stock assessment says they're overfished and overfishing is occurring.
But if I guess what I'm saying, if you were still used the old model, would we be in this situation?
Hasn't changed.
Threshold does not change.
The threshold, I'm saying the model being used to plot all this out on.
So the changes to the striped mullet stock assessment throughout history it's a long process because there's been 4 stock assessments for striped mullet at this point. And last year at one of the commission meetings, we provided that entire history to the commission in a document because it is pretty extensive. So the first striped mullet stock assessment occurred in 2002, and that determined that the stock was not, overfishing wasn't occurring, could not determine an overfished stock status. Second, striped mullet benchmark stock assessment occurred in 2013. It determined overfishing wasn't occurring, and again, could not determine an overfished stock status. In 2018, we did an update to that stock assessment, an update to the 2013 stock assessment. And this was in response to the commercial landings falling below the adaptive management trigger. So landings fell below basically a million pounds for the first time ever, pretty much. So we did an update to get a better idea of the stock status. Overfishing was not occurring, but we also identified a number of issues with that model. There was the results of that model were very uncertain. The diagnostics of that model were not very good at all. There was a lot of changes that we identified that needed to occur so that we could get a better handle on the actual stock status. And most of the issues that we identified in that update, they'd all been identified previously. There was nothing really new, but we identified solutions for those problems as part of the 2018 update. So for the 2022 stock assessment, benchmark stock assessment, we implemented those things to improve that model. And of course, that model found the stock was overfished and overfishing was occurring. That model went through peer review process with external experts, and they all recommended that this was the best data available for management of the stock. And they recognized that the improvements that we made from previous models were correct. They were good improvements on the model. So yes, we did change the model. That's just part of the learning process that we go through as we continue to improve and refine our stock assessment process. It's common in any fishery. That happens frequently in science. So we feel pretty good based on the input that we've gotten from outside sources that the model that we're using is correct. It's improvement from previous models, and this is the best science available to manage the stock. I hate to waylay the conversation to go back to the stock assessment because it's what we're using for management, and really your role at this point is to.
I don't think it's way like, I think the evidence that's been presented by these fellows is, look, it's not overfished. There's tons of fish everywhere. You're just not seeing them in your model. I think that's the problem. You can have a 70,000 pound strike that hadn't occurred in Lord knows when, 30, 40 years, and say there ain't no fish there. That don't make sense to me. Sorry. Sorry.
I guess you're more than welcome to take that information and what you think and make whatever recommendation you would prefer.
Yeah, I think as a committee, the state has a stock assessment that's been peer reviewed and accepted for management. Its terminal year data is 2019, but that is not, that's what we're dealing with. Until they're able to provide a new assessment, data that goes through 2024, 2025, this is the best model that we have. It's obviously not going to capture any patterns in abundance that have been seen in the last year or two, because the data that's in this model ends at 2019. But it's the best available model that we have. And so as a committee, our role is to make recommendations on preferred management strategies. The commission is going to make some decisions about which options to go with. And our role is to provide some input on what we think are the best options to go with to achieve either 25 to 35% reductions in harvest that the model recommends. So I think and the challenge is for, this fishery is complex in terms of, gears, user groups, seasonality, regional differences. But, for as long as I've been on this committee, it feels like it's about the same for every other fishery in this state, right? And so we just have a lot of complex fisheries in terms of the biology of species here, primarily because of where we are latitudinally. These species, they're most of the time we're at the edges of distribution, so they have unique aspects of their life history strategies and movement patterns, and that affects how they get harvested by different people in different places. And so that's just part of what we're always dealing with. I think what the division, is trying to do in this case, and does in most cases, when there's reductions, to try to spread those reductions across as many users as possible, rather than having one group take most of the reductions. And so what that means is that you have a complex fishery with lots of users, lots of complexities in space and time. In order to create fair and equitable reductions, the regulations that they choose, the strategies are going to match that complexity. And so we can make recommendations and say, let's do something really simple. And that's fine. We can do that. Just knowing that simple recommendations often lead to one or two groups taking most of the hit versus other groups. So That's always the challenge. And that's why I think the division recommends what they have. Is to create this, that's complicated in a way, certainly more complicated than a simple weekend closure. But having some trip limits that change seasonally and then not having a trip limit, other than weekends during the grow mullet season would allow the fishery to proceed in a way that's as close to its historical function or operation as possible and spread the 5% reduction throughout the year.
Well, it seems to me if you put in these monthly, whatever, trip limits, ultimately somewhere there has to be a total number that when we reach, you have to stop. Otherwise, it really doesn't change much, I hate to say it for the road mullet guys because they get to fish all the way through. They may catch way more than what we should catch because they're open at the end. You know what I'm saying? Somewhere there has to be something to say there is a stop. If you put these restrictions on basically the meat bait type people here, there has to be something on the other end to stop it if we reach, and they may not reach the number, which is fine. I mean, you may or may not reach it, but sooner or later there has to be a number that says the total catch season has to close when there's a total catch of X. Otherwise, this is no management other than you're, in my mind, tweaking around the edges on the bait people and meat people. But you have no season and you have no total catch. You got to do one or the other to allow escapement. The road fishery.
I will say that our recommendation is active season because getting November 16th, it's about 250 pound per limit, which would
Effectively stop it.
You would and it would still allow for some incidental catch without having.
And that would be across the state, which means the north or the south, which wouldn't affect the north probably as much as it would affect the south. So you get into that, because they're moving down the beach. We all know that. They're going from up here to down there and keeping on going. Right?
Well, if we want to get into our,
I mean, they're moving on. Let's just say
they are
that.
spawning in the ocean.
They're spawning in the ocean. Where they end up, who knows?
When you see them swimming in a circle,
Yep.
they've segregated out from all the other population. That school right there is swimming in a circle, those fish offshore.
They're going somewhere.
They're headed to do their duty.
It's no different than Manhattan are out there doing the same thing in the wintertime.
So just to understand the recommendation on 5N, November 16 through all of December and January, so about 2.5 months, you would have a 50-pound trip limit, commercial trip limit, 7 days a week. And then from February 1 to October 15, you have a 500-pound commercial trip limit, but still the weekend trip limit would still be 50?
Yeah.
Okay. So you'd still have so it's essentially like a weekend closure, right? For all intents and purposes, but then you're having this trip limit. And then
So the intention is people who are not targeting, their incidental catch doesn't get caught up. I understand that.
So the idea is to keep that 50-pound catch pretty much all year round. Except during the roe mullet fishery on the weekends, but even during the winter closed season, you still allow that 50-pound bag limit just to allow some incidental catch, but also some some of the very small users that use it in a different way that maybe depend on that, those small catches. Like shrimp is something that's going to be valuable to them. And then how does the reduction drop from 36.9 to 35.5 when you add the stop net cap? I guess it's just not intuitive enough.
Right, yeah. It's definitely not intuitive. So we were to set a 30,000 pound cap for the stop net fishery, they would not be adherent to the rest of these regulations. So they would not actually be seeing much reduction at all. If you look at the past 5 years, except for this year, they were well below 30,000 pounds. So 30,000 pounds would technically could be in some years an increase to their catch. But we recognize the historical and cultural value of this fishery. And during our advisory committee workshop, it was unanimous that this fishery was an important cultural asset to North Carolina, and they wanted to maintain that. It does make a small impact to the rest of the fishery, but it allows that fishery to continue to operate. And part of the reason that we allowed a separate cap is because at these more intensive restrictions, that would eliminate that fishery. They need to make a certain amount to their tractors, their gear going. It's a small operation when you think of the entire state, but it's actually a pretty expensive single operation. So,
And where did the 30,000 pounds come from?
discussion at the advisory committee, we asked, first we said, what's your break even? And then we said, what is a value that you could live with and continue to operate and not lose everyone who's helping you participate in this fishery? And
If I remember, there's really just a handful of people that,
there's one operation,
yeah.
and it's one guy owns everything, and him and a couple other guys, other fishermen and people who live on boat banks to come, and people make a small amount of money from it on an average year. I can't speak for this year, but really it's just cultural heritage that's it's significant to that region, and pretty much from every sector agreed that they wanted to keep that.
So that stop net fishery would be unique in that it would operate just on, it would open October 15th, continue until until December 31st, or it hits this cap, but it wouldn't have the daily limits.
No, and the reason
Just
that
fishery.
this is feasible is because it is literally one group of people doing it, and they already have to call us when they're gonna strike it because of spotted sea trout issues.
Okay.
So it's not too much more work to.
It's about 1.5% change.
And the likelihood of somebody else setting up shop is pretty remote.
It's,
I mean, can't, or most likely won't. There's two different ways to look at that.
Very expensive to get into.
Oh, I understand it is.
And the area, I think, is limited by numbers that can set. So no more than 4, I think, but I have to look at the
Yeah. It was very, I know it was very restrictive,
Very restricted.
Yeah. So, I mean, maximum, there could be 4 of them.
but you
But
have
they
practical
Will have the
one.
same 30,000 pounds.
That'd be part of it.
That would be part of it, but there's one and economically. you
don't
can't
have to
go-
worry about people rushing in. I didn't think so.
Not an emerging industry.
Can you repeat that, Truby, please?
You said it's not an emerging industry or fishery.
Sea fishery. It is.
Folks. So Truby's still online. Jeff is still online.
Jason's on there.
Jason's still online.
And Michael Yates is on there.
So comments, questions from the folks online? It's easy for us here to just forget that you guys are there. So we don't want to forget that you're there. So
No, Fred, I think you and the
and
team
you got
there have
something
been
to say.
covering a lot of it.
Why is the volume all of a sudden?
Trying to adjust the volume. Hold on, Jason.
Can you say something, Jason?
Yeah, I just said that, I believe that, Fred and the team that's locally there in the room, they've addressed a lot of the questions that I think most of us have had as well.
Thank you, Jason.
Anything that I
was
thinking to bring up pretty much. Are we going to address the commercial, the recreational? Can I break them into two things? They're different.
That was Pam, buddy. Pam, you're very much.
Yeah, Pam, we can't hear you.
Pam was in a mess.
Hello?
Take your microphone.
She is.
No, it's not so
You got your speakerphone on, sweetheart?
Hello?
good. That,
There you
that
go.
sounds okay right there.
I'm not sure if somebody's waiting for me to speak or what.
Yeah, we are. Go ahead, Pam.
You're right there.
I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought. So, are you wanting me to comment or are we voting?
No, I'm waiting for you to comment.
Say what? I can't hear but one of you at a time. Do you have a comment, Pam? Well, the only comment I've got is Ken hit the nail on the head talking about that stock assessment and how the benchmarks change. That's pretty much sums up a lot of different things. And I mean, there's a load of fish, there's a load of mullets, and all you're doing here is regulating people. You're not going to regulate fish, and you're not going to create any more fish. So what you will do is hurt some of the fishermen as per the usual, and I can't go with that, and I just can't. And so anyway, you put your ideas out there, and I'll vote however I think, but I've not heard anything that warrants a lot of change. I just haven't heard it, not from what this discussion, what I've heard of this discussion. So I just, you can conjure up most any kind of problem if you work hard enough. And, it's just played out in a lot of different fisheries, and it's frustrating, but really nothing I can do about it one way or the other. But I hope people will just do the right thing, that's all. And the right thing means something different to everybody. So I don't feel like the evidence is there to put on a lot of big changes. And this whole trip limit thing, I think that's a bust. Ken pretty much explained what my feelings were on it anyway, because we've had humongous catches of mullets, and as far as the Star Path crowd, I think they just ought to be left alone, do whatever it is they're doing now. They've been doing it forever, and just leave it alone. Move on. Find somebody else to torment. So, that's just my opinion on it for what it's worth, which isn't much.
Other comments from folks online? Jeff?
I'll say this for the sake of time, being we got to get to the point sooner or later. I'm going to make a motion to approve the DMF recommendations of 5N, 6B, and option 10 and related to the commercial fishery. You can get on with what we're going to do to vote.
So we have a second.
Can you please, wait.
I'll second it.
They're recommended by the
DMF
DMF recommendations. I listed them off. 5N, 6B, option 10
For the commercial.
for the commercial. We're not talking about recreational, talking about commercial.
Have a second.
Seconded.
And I'll second it.
Have Another
Second.
Oh,
Okay, so we have a motion on the table that the Southern Regional Advisory Committee supports the division's recommendations for combination of management measures 5 and stop net specific catch cap, as well as the ability to have an adaptive framework when the next assessment comes up, which hopefully will be soon. Have that seconded. So discussion.
I think, Tom, I think what you were concerned about was a hodgepodge of mixed up stuff.
And this is,
Nobody could get it and sort nothing out. Well, I thought I could fish here, but I can't fish over there because it's Saturday, but I can fish down there on Saturday. I can't fish. That's all confusing, Tom, and I appreciate your motion, but I think you're off base there.
I'll say this, motions are made to be discussed, not saying you support everything in them.
Exactly.
It is to advance the conversation because we're going to have to vote on some hodgepodge or combination of these things.
Yep.
So I put out basically DMF's recommendation. You know, I do believe in simple is better, but I do understand also user group issues. If you do something that helps one and screws the other, you got a problem there too. And I'm trying to find ways that do it and try to be simple. And I'll say just 5N, it took me a while to get there, but at least I see that it does allow fishing to occur the way it's being done. I wish there was a total quota for the fishery at the end to look at from that point of view, but that's not what that, but because I think ultimately you have to say there has to be a total allowable catch. Otherwise, you're gonna be real quick into option 10 and the director having to do something if things go way out of whack. Because you have daily or monthly guidelines, and then you get to the end and it's basically, you can catch whatever you need and there's no bycatch, doesn't interfere with the fishery to any real degree because you've got that basically from, I guess it's, when does it start? The
Mid-October to mid.
15th to the 16th, it's whatever you can catch.
Except for Saturdays.
Except for Saturday.
And how much,
Hopefully that will reduce some of the catch. I don't know if it will.
how many fish you gonna end up throwing back that will end up floating on the beach?
You're not gonna throw it back any during mid-October to mid-November.
The prime season, you ain't gonna toss anything, but I'll say this, by the way it's set up here.
By 5N, you can't.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, you-
October, mid-October, November, unless you're fishing on Saturday, Sunday, you're gonna keep every fish you catch.
That's right.
I'm fishing on Saturday. That's what I mean.
But
If you catching them on Saturday or Sunday, you're gonna have to throw them back.
Yeah, but you're not gonna.
If you're gonna target mullet, you won't fish those days. That's just what it's gonna boil down to. If you're incidentally fishing, catch some, you catch some.
I think by putting a limit on there of 50 pounds, you're inviting problems. Somebody's gonna wrap them up and say, well, I got 100 pounds of fish, what I want to pound it for to keep 50 pounds. I disagree with what the division is recommending there.
This effectively gives the Saturday, Sunday closure to these gentlemen over here. They were talking about effectively for targeted fishery. This allows for indirect catch.
So does 5A.
Yeah, but 5A doesn't meet the reduction target.
But if we add something to 5A, we could meet that reduction target, couldn't we?
That's what 5N is.
Well, 5A,
5N is sort of
if
A, but
if the motion is to amend 5A, can we do that?
The motion was for 5N.
Right, I understand that.
Need to go. I'm not gonna allow an amendment. We're gonna go vote up or down on what's been proposed.
I think, Tom, what we're doing is we're making recommendations to the commission.
That's all we're doing.
We still have to vote on those.
If you want to see if there's support to approve this or disapprove it, then you move on to something else if it's not approved.
Understood,
That's the process.
understood. But there can be more than one recommendation. Is my point. That's all.
Go through the process.
Go through the process for the division to have a choice.
Go through the process. A motion's made, a motion is discussed, and voted up or down. That's the way it goes. If it's voted down, then you go look at another option. Is that fair enough?
We can, if this were voted up, we could still provide another.
You can always go and say, we want to also recommend something else. That's a separate motion.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yep.
And just to clarify, you said it wouldn't meet the target reduction. Is it not supposed to be 20 to 33% target reduction?
Well,
The recommended.
well, given, yeah, I mean, and given that that was the range, right? And given the likelihood of behavioral shifts, the division is recommending to
A
go
little bit over.
a little higher at the high end of that range, rather than the low end of that range. And
Oh.
just the weekend closure would be low end range.
So to clarify for you, everything in that table can legally be adopted under the FR.
Correct. So it does, just not what they think it should be.
Just the weekend closure would achieve objective. It just, if there's more behavioral shift than anticipated, it may be.
I think there's a way you can get around behavior and eliminate that aspect of it totally. And that'll be in my motion, Tom.
So just
We have one motion to go through at a time.
just to make sure everybody's clear on what this option is, right? It's essentially a winter from November 16 to February 1. The fishery is essentially closed except for incidental catch. In other words, the 50-pound trip limit is going to prevent targeting for 2.5 months, or at least it should. And on the weekends. And then it has trip limits throughout the rest of the year, except during the remote season, when those trip limits would only be in place on the weekends.
Understood. And you've cut out the roe fishery in the southern part of the state completely. Because you've cut out the roe fishery in the southern part of the state. Because it,
Then the other recommendation would have been for the southern.
yes, it would.
Southern roe fishery.
Southern roe fishery, right.
When is it?
Our fish don't even get here till Thanksgiving or after. And they close it on the 16th. That's the problem. That's been the problem the whole time from,
The 10th. And the recommendation earlier in this thing is for the 7th. Price goes to the 16th,
right.
which is farther than what it went this year and what the earlier recommendation is.
Look at this, Tom. You got a division that's being wedged here. Okay, you got a northern drought. They start back in October, middle of October. They're already catching 14-15% cut fish. Okay, and they're going to follow those fish all the way through the season. They got 6 weeks they can fish on those fish. Okay, down here in South, we don't even start to get to 13 or 14% till almost the middle of November. Okay, and then we got 10 days to fish. That's what's occurring. That's what's occurring. They've created that division between, it's not equal across the board for everybody. That's the problem.
Understand what you're saying. I look at what y'all recommended for time split, season closure, and it was before what this was. This recommendation is for the trip limits to change. If you went to a full closure.
For the full extend the season was this year.
Yep.
Also get a greater reduction aiming toward supplement somewhere in the middle.
So I got 10 days in a row season. About what it amounts to.
That's when it would start, but
So I guess the question for y'all, did y'all look at, I mean, you had these various dates and whatever. Did y'all look at a different break, north and south, than what you put in here? But you didn't, this is all catch-all one. But then the previous one of season closures to get to certain things were earlier dates. But at the same time, we know fish move at different time schedules. And in the southern, I think under this would be worse than the north. That's just the part of it.
That's the reality of it.
Yeah. Because it doesn't allow for a longer, you could do this and split that catch what you can season in the south to be another week or two longer, you know, whatever it may be.
And you're not gonna get the reduction.
Is there a,
That's,
is there an
that's,
option?
that's the
Are we gonna, the real question is, are we gonna have equal opportunity?
That's
Or not?
That's putting the baby here.
So if you had a 2 or 3 week row mullet season, in the northern half of the state, and a 2 or 3 week row mullet season in the southern half of the state, and those, would that be able to still achieve the reduction? In other words, can you make it so that you have 2 row mullet seasons, north and south, and they both contribute the same amount to the reduction?
yes,
In
and
other words,
it's not that we didn't want to do that, it's that there's only but so many options we were gonna list.
Yeah.
So that is absolutely something that could be considered, and
Okay.
that could be this group's recommendations. It is just not something that we had thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
That's a
next-
separate motion, or is it?
no, but it could be a friendly amendment to this motion to say,
You either do a friendly motion or you vote and start over again. You do either one.
Do you want to say we probably are not gonna be able to give it, you're gonna ask what the reduction would be?
Right.
We can't do that right now.
That's the problem.
no, but we
No, I
to consider. it.
Yes.
I think what the option to look at, the option to look at is look at this way, if you were going to split it into a northern fishery and a southern fishery, the historical landings from the northern fishery and historical landings from the southern fishery, and you need a reduction percent. You take 20% from the northern fishery and you take 20% in the southern fishery by time.
And I do want to say that you just described exactly how we approached the supplement, and we were told that that was not equitable between the north and south. So that's the exact procedure that we used to separate the north and south. And we heard repeatedly that that was not a good way to do it.
And you heard it from,
The fishermen.
It's what, 3 days difference? So that's the other.
That's what it calculated
The
to,
volume.
3 days. That was based on,
That's the
choose a
end date.
5-year period that we based it, so a 5-year period. And we looked at the daily landings and we calculated how to get a set percentage reduction from each area when the season would need to end.
I think your problem in the hook in it comes in, the problem comes in is recoupment. In other words, you're gonna have northern fishermen transitioning into the southern fishing time. How would you do that?
You're saying the northern fishermen coming down into the
Right.
south? I don't know that there's any way that we could tell people what that's.
Going up there, yeah.
Right.
Vice versa.
it's a fishery, and a fishery doesn't matter who's fishing it.
We could simply add some language to say that we support the division's recommendations, but we ask the commission to carefully consider equitability during the road mullet season between the northern and southern regions. Just ask them to, because we don't have the data.
We don't have the data.
No. I'd like to offer an amendment, a friendly.
We got one going
Go
here.
ahead, Jeff.
I'm not gonna try to say the exact wording, but you could say something that would have an equal reduction to this. Now, it can only go to a day, we can't shave parts of days, but an equal reduction to this that would be an equitable reduction during the row season to the north and south. And if you're okay with the 58 bridge, that's how we already have it split. We could calculate that in a couple days. You want to split somewhere else, it's gonna.
Everything's split at the 58 bridge. You don't
Okay.
want to change it together something else.
Just considering.
I'm not gonna try to wordsmith it for you, but that's something in, along those lines.
So you want to make a friendly amendment that says, do these with the staff looking at tweaking row mullet season north and south to create equitable reduction. I am fine with that.
We
I don't know what it's gonna look like, but it sounds better than what we got.
I don't think it'll be too different.
I think when somebody needs, well, I think he has to accept. them.
I accepted it.
Now we have more discussion.
Ruby has to accept.
Second has to accept.
Is this,
I accept it also.
this is what you wanted to read?
Yeah. Yep, week or adjust. Yeah.
I was just going.
That's the row season.
So we have a motion and an amendment that's been, a friendly amendment that's been seconded, accepted. We can have more discussion of that, or we can call the question and see if folks are supportive of that motion. Let's call the question and see what kind of support we have.
Like you to go person by person.
Sure, we can do a roll call.
Sam Boyce. Jason Fowler,
Aye.
Jeff Harrell.
Aye.
Okay, they're there. Jeremy Skinner,
No.
Pam Morris,
Nay.
thank you. Trudy Proctor,
Hey,
Fred Sharp,
Yes.
Ken Ziegler,
Hey.
Tom Smith,
Yes.
Tim Wilson is absent, and Michael Yates.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes.
7-3.
4, 5, 7-3 on that.
I did ask for an alternative motion. Yeah, I'd like to make an alternative motion, excuse me, option 5A with a caveat. Mention 3/8 minimum mesh size. January the 1st,
Second. Mention what?
3/8 bar.
Bar mesh. Okay,
From January the 1st to March 31st. Or is it 30th?
Minimum or max?
Minimum. I believe that
2 and 2 3/4 inch strip.
right,
Minimum mesh. They're in that window.
right. I believe that would put you well beyond, that 25% reduction there. I believe that's gonna probably put you up into 38, 39% reduction.
Provide a little information on that.
Okay,
That the mesh size is not gonna be quantifiable.
okay, let me ask you this.
And it's basically the back of minimum size, so
Mhm.
you could set a minimum size instead.
Here's what I suggested was a minimum size.
Minimum fish size instead. But, 'cause I think we'd be able to calculate.
we could calculate minimum fish size, like,
So a reduction would have to be based on the fish size. We don't have the data available to calculate a reduction based on mesh size, because we would have to conduct a study to look at.
All the data, with all the data that the division gets on the trip ticket, you can't tell me what size fish is caught in it.
with option 5A, that meets like the statutory requirements. If you wanted to add a mesh size restriction onto that, we could estimate based on size of fish landed, what the reduction would be. We wouldn't be able to necessarily, I don't think would be necessarily appropriate to add those two together, but you're already getting to the statutory requirement with 5A alone. You could add that minimum mesh size as a supporting thing that would help.
I'll do that as a supporting.
Since 5A meets reductions through the FRA, this is fine, we don't have to calculate.
I'm sorry to confuse it. I just said that because you were talking about reductions, and I just wanted to make it clear that that would be very difficult.
My reasoning here is just this. You state the problem is being recruitment and responding.
Have a second on that motion?
1 3/8 or no?
Have a second on the motion of just a weekend closure with the addition of a 1 3/8 bar minimum mesh size during January. That's the motion that's on the table right now. We need a second before we can discuss.
Second, then the motion fails without a second.
Anybody online wants to second this motion? So we don't have a second.
Okay, well, I'll make an alternate to the motion and remove the 1 3/8 bar mesh and just go with Saturday and Sunday closure.
Second that.
One second. Okay, so Ken, what is your new motion?
Just 5A. Seconded by Jeremy. So we have just a motion on the table to support option 5A, seconded by.
I'm just putting that up as a reminder for anybody.
Now, just so we can clarify, if the committee votes to support this motion as well, meaning, again, we're not making these regulatory changes, we're just providing advice to the commission. So we end up providing advice to the commission where we support two different options. Is it just simply going to be their interpretation that we would support either of those options, or that we support both of those options, not necessarily that we're ranking one ahead of the other, we're just supporting them both?
That is correct, and that's how it would be presented within the table for the issue paper itself, is what are the motions specific to these committees. Yeah, subject to their interpretation is correct, right?
So we have a motion on the table that's been seconded that would support, that would just include a commercial closure on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday closures. That's just commercial, right? It's not recreational closure. It's just a commercial closure. And so we can have discussion about that motion before we call a vote on whether the committee supports that motion as well. Again, understanding that we can support both doesn't necessarily mean we're choosing one over the other. We can make a motion that they both meet the requirement. One is more conservative than the other and provides for an estimated 35% reduction in harvest, and the other is about a 25% reduction in harvest. They both meet the reductions necessary to end overfishing status and then to rebuild the stock. So discussion on the motion of just just 5A, which is the weekend closure.
I think that's where we're at, Tom. And I agree with you. I think there's gonna be some recoupment. But I think the issue is here is simplicity. And that's it. We're talking about January the 1st and November 16th through December 31st, 50-pound, Saturday and Sunday, 50-pound limit. And then February the 1st, October. Nobody's gonna keep track of that stuff. And it's creating a whole bunch of, I hate to talk against that motion, but I'm just trying to be factual, as plain and simplistic. Saturday and Sunday closure. It's fair to everybody, equal access, equal opportunity. Everybody gets treated the same.
Not only is it simple, but I would agree with 5N if I thought there was an actual problem with the stock. And I do not believe that. So I think the lower end of the reduction is going to be sufficient. Because the numbers we're seeing more recent years are showing upward trends and not downward. So I think we need more data before we can go to more extreme measures.
Questions?
I will just say, again, a number of these, the FMP and the amendments to it, and we each time number of to reach whatever target or threshold or whatever we did. And if you're saying, okay, this does 25.7%, and you're not counting on any change of effort or whatever because of the Saturday, I'm not sure you ever realize the full percentage catch there, and you will fall 25% and probably handily so. So that's my thought on it. It is simple. I understand that. But I'm not sure it will actually do what needs to be done.
Where were these other FMPs done?
Over the last, the original FMP, this is Amendment 2, so.
In North Carolina?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Anything. And, but it now says we're overfished. I'm just saying, the last time we did this, they said, oh, we don't have to do anything because if we do, we stay where we are, we're okay. And we weren't. And it hadn't happened just in striped mullet. It's happened in every fishery, the flounder, you go through the whole scheme of them. You go to the absolute minimum and then expect no change of behavior for whatever's put in there. And something changes.
I think you misconstruing it the wrong way, Tom. I think looking at, excuse me. I think you're looking at, you're not taking two things I want to make you a point of. It's 25.7% that meets the reduction requirement, one, okay? So it's not like we haven't done anything and we're not doing anything if we accept this motion, okay? That's a wrong thought for me. It does meet the minimum reduction, okay?
I'll say it may meet the minimum reduction if there's no change of behavior.
What if it's a change in the stock itself? I mean, keep in mind now, from all accounts.
To work with, that's all.
Well, from all accounts of what we're hearing in the last 2 or 3 years, we got an expanding stock.
Well, I know a couple of years ago, there was more finger mullet running down the beach than I had seen in years. And that's what you're working off of now, but I didn't see them this year. Anywhere near, I didn't see them anywhere near what I saw in the past. I'll just say that. Not that they weren't like they were a couple odd years ago. And those are the ones you're working right now.
You want to know something inside?
I think also it's important to keep in mind that, if we already voted to support the option that includes option 10, which is this, which allows the division and the commission the flexibility So if the stock is expanding and the numbers from the next assessment and the fishery independent catch data from the fleet, and they end up supporting that notion, that can be dealt with as part of an
Adaptive management. They can back off.
They can say, wow, the stock has rebounded really quickly. Things are good. We can back off of these
Town limits or whatever.
trip limits right now.
Option 10 is a different motion altogether.
No, we just,
The motion.
we just voted for it. It's part of the EMF recommendation is just 5, 6, and 10.
Okay.
It's just this it's just 10.
I don't have a problem, with including that on this motion,
No, no, I mean,
but it's a different option in the paperwork.
I'm just saying, we already voted to support the set of recommendations that the division had with the friendly amendment for 5N. And so that already accounts for, it already includes the ability for them to be adaptive quickly if everything that you're saying in terms of the number of mullet out there bears out in the next assessment. They can make adjustments quickly. They don't have to wait for another amendment. They don't have to wait.
Understand that.
To wait. And so,
But you voted for that in the last motion. What I'm saying, I don't have a problem with including that in this motion as well.
no, that's fine. I'm just saying that, if you feel like the recommendation as it stands is too restrictive, opting for a 36% or 35% reduction as opposed to 25. If what you're saying bears out in the next assessment, the ability to be adaptive and lower that reduction for the future is there, as opposed to saying, well, let's not do too much, and then we come back 2 years from now and those numbers don't bear out and the mullet aren't there, then you have to become more restrictive.
I got you.
It's always
Jeremy,
harder
would you
to.
have a problem
it's
with
always harder to
amending
add more.
to include option 10?
But just for, just trying to clarify here. We're assuming that you're gonna keep your recommendation for the stop net fishery. All the reductions would be coming out of that last column on the right.
Right.
And I just.
We would need that point of clarification for our records to ensure that it didn't include the stop net. Separate out what 5A is.
Right.
And if you.
With,
You want to also add 6B and 10?
no. 10, I don't have a problem with. If Jeremy is fine with 10.
I would just like to say, if you put that restriction on the stop net crew and you're concerned about the next guy catching those fish, if the stop net crew is not gonna be able to catch them, that's gonna really limit who's able to catch them in the ocean. So there's gonna be a lot more, escapes than what.
It's the other way around because stop that fishery doesn't get. That's not the rule, right? I mean, to go from 25 to 24, it's a.
The reason that it would be a lower reduction, meaning you're going to get less reduction, is because with that catch cap, with that stop net cap, the stop net fishery would not have to be adherent to a weekend. They could fish every day. And the reason that you don't get any extra reduction with the 30,000 catch cap is because that fishery doesn't normally catch 30,000.
Would it?
But
Let's get to the point that stop net fishery ain't caught a decent catch of fish in what, 5 years, except for this past year?
well, my argument is, say they do catch the 30,000, we're still not allowed to fish on the weekends, correct?
Stop net could.
But they've caught 30,000. They're over for the season.
Yes.
So anything that gets out from us on the weekends, there's gonna be a lot less chance of those fish being caught. I just want people to understand
The
that.
crazy math is if you leave the stop net reduction in there, you fall under 25%.
Right, if they can't fish Saturday and Sunday, then you would actually see a larger estimated.
Confuses me because there's not a limit on the fish. So
Just
they
to
can catch
clarify,
the fish that-
with option 10, when did you say you would think we would have the information to, be able to adjust that accordingly?
That's adaptive.
The adaptive management.
It depends on the next time.
So we would like to have a stock assessment update with the terminal year of 2020. But right now we have one stock assessment scientist. And we have over a dozen members of species, so it's.
Are we, this is starting in 2023, is that the, part of the 10 years? Are we
So
starting in
this
23?
10 years did start in 2023.
Okay, so we have, so that'll basically be close to halfway mark or a little under halfway mark of that. By the time we're thinking we'll regroup with this. Just trying to play out different scenarios.
I'll call this a vote. I feel like we've gone off topic of this.
Yep. Do we want to, are we okay, are folks okay to call this to a vote?
Is there a need to add option 10 to that?
That's what I was asking you.
So this would include option 5A and option 10.
Would you like 10 added?
Well, that would leave us the possibility of it ever being adaptive and restrictions lessened.
10 said he's okay with
Work
that.
both ways.
Jeremy said he's okay with that. Friendly motion.
Not, it's not that cap. Good. So it would be a 25.7% reduction.
But like I said,
To the stop net.
does not apply to the stop net fishery. They can fish on the weekend.
This, as written, would apply.
As written.
It would.
And I think
If you put, if you put
they
the
would be with
Everybody.
B in here,
Mhm.
what it does is it just creates a quota for the stop net fishery. They can fish no trip limits any day of the week, and they just stop when they hit 30,000 pounds. So this fishery would basically continue as it always has.
I can't see that happening. So many fish you got to quit. I could say that to a lot of fellas.
But if you don't support 6B, then the stop net fishery has the same daily caps as everybody else. If you don't support 6B.
They go and catch 30,000.
You can't really fish on the weekends.
They can go out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and catch 30,000 fish every day.
No, they'd have to, they got to trip.
Well, under 5A, they don't. Under 5A, they can go out and catch as many as they want, anytime they want, right? Under that option.
Well, during the row season, there's a big open window there.
Pretty narrow right now.
You know, if we're talking about option 5A.
Right.
And we don't put 6A in
6B.
there, 6B in there.
Right.
Then they do not have a limit. They can go out there and fish whenever they want. I know there's, except the weekends, but they can go out Monday through Friday. And if they catch 20,000 fish at a time, they can go catch it and pull it in.
That's historical fishery. I don't see why not.
So if they go out and catch,
But keep in mind, they've had one land in 5 years.
I'm just pointing it out that that's what 5A is saying. Yes.
The only reason why we had it separated like that is something like a weekend closure. When they already set one time this year, that one time would have been on a Saturday. This wouldn't be in there on Monday. So
right,
it would definitely, or could definitely have an effect.
Stop net?
Stop. Having a weekend.
That's the
But it
whole
helps
purpose
them
of
in-
stopping it. They'll stop and they'll hover around there for a week long. Nobody
But
messes.
it helps them or hurts them depending on how many fish are out there. Yes.
They
And how they're
get
moved.
more than 30 and they get less to 0 cents in a year.
Because it falls on it, the fish come through on the Saturday and they're not allowed to be out.
Blow hits them and on they go.
So let's vote on this because Truby's gotta leave.
Well, I do too. I got a long ways to go.
Yeah, so let's vote on this, do a roll call vote on whether we also, again, just keep in mind, if we support this motion, it's not saying we don't support the other one.
Exactly.
It's just saying that we're supporting both potential options.
Sam Boyd,
I'm gonna abstain. I don't know about this option.
Mallard,
Nay.
Harrell,
Nay.
Jeremy Skinner,
Hey.
Pam Morris, Ruby Proctor,
Nay.
Fred Sharp,
Gonna abstain.
Ken Sigler,
Yes.
Tom Smith,
Nay.
Tim Wilson is absent, and Michael Yates.
Nay.
This motion fails. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2.
All right, so we need to cover the recreational, which there are two recommendations, is a 50 fish recreational bag limit. Then the other option is a 50 fish recreational bag limit with an exception for hire vessel operators to possess a bag limit for the number of licensed pairs.
And just to confirm, the recreational bag limit, option 1, that's per angler in the boat. Is that correct? Just to make sure.
So it has both of those as the division recommendation. I guess I'm not.
One is the for hire specifically.
One's just regular.
Option 2 is just for hire. Separate them out.
So that for hire one allows them to have those fish prior to having people on the boat.
It's just the way that it's written, that it. It's still a 50 fish bag limit per angler. It's just when you're alone, you're 50, if you're on for hire, it's 50.
Well, the for hires need to get their bait either buy or catch their bait first.
Make a motion that we accept both of these recommendations, option 1 and 2 for the recreational.
I'll second that motion.
And 2B, 1B and 2B.
1B and 2B.
Jason.
Want adaptive management in there?
They don't have it for that. I don't know that it's gonna make much difference in that finisher.
It's option 2.
Option 2.
Yeah, no, it's not in that.
The adaptive management covers the whole entire FMP.
The whole FMP. Discussion on these two recommendations. So we have a motion to support option 1B and 2B, which is a recreational bag limit of 50 fish, or higher limit of 50 fish. Any discussion, comments, concerns?
I get a little bit of concern. You're looking at a commercial harvest. You say he's limited to 50 pounds. Well, that's in roe mullet terms, that's 25 fish. So you're saying the recreational guy can have more fish than I can do. No, I don't agree with that.
When the road mullet season's in, you can catch all you want, is the way it is. This is for
Not with what you just said up there. It says 50 fish,
Saturday
50
and
pounds,
Sunday.
Saturday and Sunday.
no, but when the commercial row season's in, up till November, whatever it is.
November
there's no
16th.
Limit on you.
But there is
The weekends, yeah.
there is after the 16th. And that,
The 16th.
after the 16th is when our fish go up. So I can have 50 pounds,
And I would say that
25 fish, and recreational can have 50 fish.
I would say that a huge amount of this is gonna be bait fish and meat fish. And there's probably not that many people go out roe mullet, recreational roe mullet fishing.
It's still 50 fish.
I'm just saying, is it a big fishery?
From our data,
It's not discernible.
It's not discernible, but we've gotten off the equal opportunity aspect of it, I guess. Doesn't matter.
It only accounts for less than 2% of the total harvest.
It's only, well,
Less than 2% of the total harvest is
that's not the point. The man's making a living off this fishery. And you're gonna shut him down on the weekend, tell him he can't have but 50 pounds or 25 roe mullet, and the other man can just go catch all he needs. That's the problem.
You're saying 50 finger mullets, bait, equivalents to 50 pounds of roe mullet.
Sure. Takes little fish to make big fish.
Understand what you're saying?
Other comments, questions? Concerns? Yeah, let's call the question.
Okay, Sam Boyce,
Aye.
Jason Fowler,
Aye.
Jeff Harrell,
Aye.
Jeremy Skinner,
Aye.
Pam Morris,
Abstain.
Proctor. That was an aye.
Yeah.
Fred Sharp, Ken Sigler,
Staying.
Tom Smith, and Michael Yates.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, so the next steps is that, the recommendations from our committee, the Northern Fish Committee, will be presented to the commission. They'll vote on their preferred management alternatives in February. That meeting is where? You guys know where that meeting is?
Finfish?
No,
New
no,
Bern.
commission.
It's in New Bern.
So we had some other folks that wanted to make public comment. I don't know if they've all disappeared.
I'll leave the paper for you.
Okay.
Had a long enough night.
Okay.
Why don't you get up and say your 3 minutes?
Take your 3 minutes. I want to hear what it was about.
You're talking about the same thing.
This is the most inappropriate place for me to present.
That's
what
okay.
we're presenting. It's actually going to go to the Habitat subcommittee.
We're all ears.
So it doesn't have anything to do with mullet.
Okay.
Thank God.
So I'd rather not hear about mullet again.
My name is Andy. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you tonight. And I can really restrict this to a paragraph, and I'll leave this paper with you. It has to do with, and I'm just going to read this. So it has to do more with eels, shad, and sturgeon than mullet. And it has to do with trying to get all of us to think about managing fisheries more holistically, not just, and I mentioned to you, how far offshore do you go to get mullet? Well, I know you don't go beyond the beach. We're thinking about marine fish in salt water, but the three that I just mentioned spend a significant part of their full life cycle. Well, I should say a significant part of their life cycle in freshwater.
So which species? You said eel, shad.
Eels, shad, and sturgeon. Short nose American.
You didn't have striped bass out.
I did. Sorry about that.
We care about
With
it.
all due respect to striped bass. And there are some other species, but don't worry about them. So what I'm hoping your August body can convey to the commissioners is looking at how we're managing the land and how that has impacts on marine fisheries, commercial, recreational, what have you. And as you've been discussing tonight, mullet are important for more reasons than just fishery. They're important to dolphin, the whole gamut. billfish. Everybody eats mullet. Almost everybody eats mullet at some stage of the mullet's life or others. So we're asking to consider harmful consequences of coastal forest destruction with all due respect to foresters, and I am a forester of sorts. I'm actually an environmental consultant. Our concern has to do with the wood pellet industry, which is currently destroying roughly 160,000 acres of North Carolina natural, basically riparian and wetland forest to feed an industry that is right now in serious economic straits. A year ago, their stock price was over $50. Today, it's about 80 cents. And they're in trouble with fraudulent accounting, but also because their whole plan of burning North Carolina trees in Europe to provide electricity to England is completely flawed. We're producing more carbon dioxide burning North Carolina trees in Europe to generate electricity than if we just exported coal to Europe and let them burn coal. It would produce less carbon dioxide. So all that we want the commission to think about is what's going on the land and how is that impacting what's going on in the sea?
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Some deep.
So you're recommending export of coal?
Using.
So I wanted to remind folks that they received, if they received the MFC update in their packet. Laura typically provided to us as an update. If you didn't get that, like Ken, if you didn't get a package, just let me know or let Tina know. We can make sure to get you the MFC update, the printed one, just things that the MFC is.
Yeah, I used to
thinking
get the big manila envelopes,
Yeah.
but I didn't get one this time.
I didn't get a manila this time.
No, it's all digital now.
I read it all online, but I didn't print it. I wasn't gonna kill too many trees.
Right, I printed mine because I was killing some trees. Because I wanted to have something to write on when I was here, but,
I count on y'all habit of when we get, executive part when we get her.
they made some new appointments. So just be aware of some new appointments. Sammy Corbin and Ryan Bethea were sworn in as new members. They're dealing with the striped mullet FMP, obviously, also the striped bass FMP. Spotted sea trout FMP is coming up for them to be dealing with in 2024. Oysters, hard clam, etc. So folks can read that. If you didn't get a copy of it, just let us know. We'll make sure you get a copy of it. Our next meeting would be scheduled for around April 10th. I forget the exact date, but it's somewhere around 3 months from now. I won't ask for issues now, but you can communicate with myself and Tom as chair and vice chair, as well as division staff. If there are issues that you'd like us to discuss, because sometimes like tonight, right, Jeremy, this was your first meeting tonight. It was completely taken up with one big issue. There are times when we don't have a big issue like this. Opportunity to discuss a range of issues, that take less time. Talk about things like that Andy just talked to us about, things like that. So if those are things that you want, if there are particular issues you want to talk about, reach out to myself and Tom and staff so we can consider those when they make the agenda.
Will do.
Okay. Yes. I think that's it. I think one more thing.
Voting's in March.
What's that?
Motion to adjourn.
No, the Founder Symposium.
Oh, what are the dates? Right.
March 20th.
Where's the next meeting?
Scheduling the Founder Symposium to highlight the research that was conducted in North Carolina and so leaders under our grant program. Thoughtful as well as commercial fishing resource fund, a lot of tagging. Don't ask me off the top of my head, but about 7 or 8 draws would be
No, if I should get it.
highlighting division sampling programs that also supported a lot of research going into the assessment. And that'll be on March 20th at the New Bern Convention Center, and details will be posted on our webpage once the agenda and all that's formalized and times for the event, and it's open to the public.
And there'll
There's a
probably be
website.
a virtual listening option, right, where people can maybe.
I don't think so,
Not
Brett,
sure.
but I'm not in the throes of the.
There's a website for more details.
Yeah. Don't think we're trying to come in place so that they can actually engage with staff as well as researchers like yourself, Dr. Sharp.
Okay.
But that's to be determined. But that session has occurred somewhat.
I'll put a note in my calendar to remind this committee about a few weeks ahead, just remind them.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's March 20th, just
Yeah.
in case you want to put that in your head.
Now, we're ready for a motion.
They're ready for a motion
Make a
to
motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thanks, everybody, for sticking it out.
Four.